In 1994, the Clinton administration established a commission on entitlement reform, and they issued their report, and that report said that by 2030, the entire federal budget would be consumed by Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and federal civilian and military pensions. So that means no money for education, no money for the military, no money for any of the things that people have become accustomed to seeing the federal government spending money on. All the money would be absorbed by these programs alone. So this report was issued, and people said, thank you very much, and then the report was promptly forgotten. Everybody ran away from the commission's report. Now, combine this with the fact that one of the major problems we're facing is and I'm going to take an extra, Bob was a few minutes over, but he needed to be because it's very complicated stuff. I'm going to take my extra few minutes as well. And plus, I'm the MC, and unless they're taking out that giant cane, there ain't no getting me off here. But I want to point out there's a problem with the aging of the American population. This is going on all over the world. In the U.S. as well, but also all over the world, particularly the developed world, that is to say. Not in Africa and in a lot of the Arab countries and so on, but in the developed world, a big problem of aging. Because what we've seen is, and I'm not saying that, by the way, it's bad that people get to live longer. That's not my point. It's that when the life expectancy increases dramatically and the share of the population over age 65 or particularly over age 85, people over age 85 are sometimes called in demographic studies, are called the old, and over age 65 are the young old. So when this number increases, medical costs go up very, very substantially. I mean, compared to younger people, as you might expect. So we've had medical advances, we've had growth and prosperity that makes possible the purchase of additional medical services. We've had the unusually large baby boom generation, of course, which is proceeding through middle age and on its way to retirement, and also falling fertility rates. So there are fewer future taxpayers to be able to provide for all the future retirees. A lot of the impossible promises the federal government has made to people and on which people have based their life plans have been predicated on the expectation that there will be an endless supply of young taxpayers-to-be coming into the world. That has not panned out. In order to be at replacement level, that is, for the population to remain stable without immigration, that's just what the term means, replacement level, is 2.1 children per household. We're at 2.0 in the U.S. But then there are some countries like Italy that are between 1.1 and 1.3. Japan is also extremely low. In fact, one Japanese commentator was only half joking when he was spelling out the demographic trend, and he said, okay, and in this year there will be one Japanese man left. I mean, it's falling that fast. So here we were told, oh, there's a population explosion. Whatever will we do? Huh, well, if only we had that problem today, because now we have a huge growing aging population and nobody to support them. By 2040, the number of Americans aged 65 to 84 will have increased by 80% from its 2000 level. The number of people 85 and older, the so-called old, will grow by 240%. By 2050, the number of people 100 and older will have increased by 13 times. In 2040, the number of Americans aged 80 and over will outnumber American children under age 5. That has never happened before. Japan, now by the way, these medical costs, total per capita health spending for the old is 3 times as much for the young old. Older Americans are consuming 4 times as much in medical services as younger and 7 times as much as children. Again, we're not saying it's terrible that people are living longer, but when people have been promised that, well, all your medical care will be provided for free or a huge portion of it will be provided for free, where's that going to come from ultimately? All these systems are going to go bust. We hear all these wonderful stories about, well, in Europe they have these wonderful government medical systems, and we're not civilized enough to have those systems. The finance ministers of these countries, behind closed doors, will freely admit to you, all those systems are going bust in the next generation because there's no way they can cope with the aging problem. So forget about modeling yourself after that. Japan, by the way, is feeling this the worst. They're already going through it. Life expectancy has reached 80. The average Japanese woman who reaches age 65 will live on average to age 85. Extreme age is more common than ever before. There was recently a case, I'm not making this up, a 100-year-old woman who was riding a motorcycle was pulled over for not wearing a helmet, and her excuse was that her 79-year-old son, who was driving the motorcycle, was wearing her helmet. We had a lot more stories like that, and good for her, good for her. I mean, she's braver than I am. But the aging of the rest of the world is an additional problem for the U.S. because of our reliance on foreign funding of American debt. And we run up these deficits. Who's going to pay for that? Where's the money going to come from to fund that? When we're borrowing from the rest of the world, well, when the rest of the world is desperately coping with their aging problem, they might not exactly feel like, well, hey, I think a great place to park our money would be in, 0.001% yielding U.S. bonds. Like that's really great. They might want to do something else with their money. So so we are in an impossible situation. Impossible. It can't be done. Bob's already given you the debt figures and told you that the situation is actually worse than those figures would indicate. So what can be done? Well, you have to cut spending. And yet, The Economist magazine recently did a survey of Americans, and they said, here are a series of areas. How many people support cutting spending in this particular area? And they had agriculture, and they had education, and military spending, and entitlement programs, and whatever, science and technology, transportation, whatever. And it was all like 17% of the people favor cutting this, and 20% favor cutting that. So apparently nobody wants to cut anything. But this can't be done, right? You see, the thing is, if something is impossible, you can guarantee it will not happen. And this trajectory that we are on is impossible to sustain, and yet we're all sitting around saying, oh, but we couldn't cut this, we couldn't cut that. It doesn't matter if you like cutting it. It's not that you're a nice person and we're all meanies. It's that we're living in the real world. Decisions have to be made. The one area where 71% of Americans favored cutting was foreign aid. Well, good. I'm all for that. Now what do we do about the other 99.8% of the U.S. budget, now that we've cut out all the foreign aid? And even the Tea Party people, God bless them, and I think they have great promise. They typically don't want to cut any military spending, even though the U.S. is spending as much as the rest of the world put together. I mean, and there isn't a single paperclip we could dare to cut from that, because we would immediately be overrun by Muslims if that happened, right? Because in the fight against Al-Qaeda, nuclear submarines are just essential in this. I mean, it just perpetuates itself. There's an interest there. I mean, there are your welfare queens right there. Nobody wants to cut there. But also the Tea Party people, you ask them, okay, what about, you think the entitlement programs are worth the money we're spending on them? Yep, absolutely, 2/3 of them. So, okay, it's wonderful that you're in favor of cutting spending. What's the spending that you want to cut? You want to cut down on White House tours? I mean, what do you want to cut? I mean, what's the point of all this? What's the point of having all these demonstrations if you don't actually want to do anything? Now, what I was going to do, if I had more time,